Welcome to the Million Pound Mission Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Shively, the PhD, the previously heavy dude, and I'm on a 1 million pound mission. Now, I've personally lost over 100 pounds, and I've applied what I've learned from my own transformation journey to help my hometown clients lose over 35,000 pounds in just 5 years. Now I'm on a mission to produce over 1 million pounds of results by delivering my best weekly tips, motivation, inspirational stories, and transformation strategies so that you can gain clarity about what you need to do to reach your goals and give you the confidence to take action. And the perfect time to start taking action is right now. So let's do this. Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Million Pound Mission Podcast. It's your buddy, Adam, the PhD, the previously heavy dude. How's it going out there in podcast land? I'm fired up for this one. This is episode number 99, Uncluttering Your Wellness with Becca Shern. This is a topic that I've wanted to bring up for a while. This is a topic that has dramatically changed my life, and that is the topic of minimalism. Minimalism is something that I discovered about a year and a half ago, and I've been applying minimalist values and principles to my life, my business, my schedule, my home. It's been a game changer for me. So I was so ready to bring up this topic, and I was so excited that Becca said yes to my interview request. So you guys are going to love this one. Now, Becca is a registered dietitian. She's a foodie. She's a self-proclaimed wellness nerd, a recreational athlete, and a mom. And she started her company, Minimal Wellness, to help people find, navigate, and enjoy the simple path to optimal health. And she wants to help people just eliminate that junk in their lives, the junk food, the advice, the stuff, the excuses, the distractions. And she wants to help us focus on the critical components of wellness, enabling us to be healthier, happier, and more fulfilled. And in this interview, we talk about how she became fascinated with health and wellness from the get-go. We talk about how minimalism has impacted her life and her business. We get into the core minimalist mindsets that we can all apply to unclutter our lives. And then we talk about her advice for somebody that is ready to simplify their life and start improving their health. I loved this conversation. Really, it just hit home with me. I think you guys are going to love it. So without further ado, here's episode number 99, Uncluttering Your Wellness with Becca Shern. All right, Becca, I'm so fired up to have you on the Million Pound Mission Podcast with me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I'm a huge fan of yours. I'm a huge fan of your story. I'm so excited to share your knowledge and your story with my audience. I thought that'd be a good place to kind of kick this off and have you tell us a little bit about your own journey of, and I know that anybody that becomes an influencer in the health and fitness space, there's some sort of a story behind that. I've got a story. I'm sure you do too. So what does that look like as far as when you started to kind of fall in love with health and fitness and wellness? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So, I grew up in a really healthy family. I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and we grew up in Minnesota and on a little hobby farm. And so running around and athletic, energetic childhood. And my mom had a garden and she cooked pretty much every meal for us, and just really healthy upbringing. And so I have a lot of gratitude for how I was raised because, just from the get-go, I knew what good food tasted like and fresh food tasted like, and knew how it felt to, move my body and understand that like, this is what health feels like. And, went to school, went to college, and just stumbled my way around college kind of literally, for a few years and didn't have any direction, and just kind of managed to sign up for a nutrition class several years in, and, fell in love with it. It was the first class that I really felt like I could sink my teeth into and enjoy. And I wanted to study and learn. And so after a few weeks of that course, I'm like, dang, I really like this and I'm good at it. So what can I do with nutrition? And I discovered dietetics. And so I dove into the dietetics program and became a registered dietitian. And then started working in the nutrition field and have kind of been passionate about it ever since. But, I like a lot of people in my, mid 20s, late 20s, found myself really just pouring into my career and trying to kind of climb up, so to speak, in the ranks within my department where I was working, and, kind of got all consumed with, improvement in the professional world. And there's a lot to be said good, that's good about learning and developing and getting better at your craft. But I kind of lost a little bit of my love and passion for it. It turned more into, a career as opposed to a passion. And then a few years ago, I guess like 3.5 years ago, my little daughter was about 1, and my marriage was falling apart, and we separated and got divorced. And during that process, I stumbled upon minimalism as a concept. And as a kid, I had grown up very simply, right? Like my family, we lived well, but we didn't have a ton of resources. And so I felt like that's how I grew up, not minimalist, but just living simply and with just enough. And I kind of realized rather that that was a really big part of who I was growing up and as a young adult. And then I lost that and was able to kind of come back to it in the last few years and have this new sort of crystallized definition of it. So I used the opportunity of like my divorce to, move into a small space and get rid of the vast majority of our things, and have really been just living simply ever since. And, my partner now, his name is Josh, and my daughter Ella and I just try to focus on, the few things that really matter to us. And for me, that's health is one of my, foundational values, and then family and, learning and growth and contributing to others. So yeah, getting rid of the excess helped me really get my passion back for health and wellness. And
that's awesome. I think that's super interesting, because you see so many people get into that where they have so much skill in the field, but they burn out on it because they lose the passion behind it. They lose their why behind the reason they started the whole process. Right. Yeah. And I'm so glad that, you reignited that and you found minimalism and all that. So I've got a ton of questions that my mind goes a mile a minute on these interviews. I'm like, okay, remember that question.
I love it.
With your nutrition, like your schooling in nutrition, how do you feel like when I was in college, I started studying exercise science and all that because I wanted to be a world famous strength coach and train athletes and all this stuff. That was like my mindset. And I had looked into doing nutrition and dietetics and things like that. But I was just so disappointed in like my university, like their dietetics program was like cooking classes and stuff like that. I'm like, this isn't teaching me anything. So how do you feel about just the, nutrition and fitness in general move so fast with the information and all the things coming out? How do you feel about just maybe with your education and then maybe even your continuing education, the balance of like relying on those tried and true methods, but then also staying current with everything? Is that something that you feel like is a struggle to just, to kind of keep up with all the current trends and information and everything that's coming out?
Yeah. I honestly think that the relevance of so many, traditional 4-year educational programs is a big struggle in just about every field right now. Yeah. And so just because the information, especially in the sciences, is so rapidly evolving, and we're able to access that information so much faster because of the internet. And for me, the undergrad was really important. I did it in the early aughties, and it was important because it taught me how to learn, right? It helped me establish these foundational habits that I needed to be able to really be effective in my career and with the work that I do. And so, yes, it gave me some really great initial knowledge, like the anatomy and the physiology and chemistry and biochemistry, and even the culinary classes were really important. But I think that anyone who pretends they're going to go through 4 years, 6 years, 8 years even of school, or physicians, go through an amazing amount of school, but like the learning never stops.
Right.
And so, I'm grateful that I did the program that I did. I've gone on and, gotten a master's in public health since, and I just consider myself a lifelong learner. So, I think your education is what you make of it. Yeah. And, if you go to 4 years of school and then think that you never have to learn another thing again, you're not going to really be very successful.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head there, Becca, because I'm sure all of us have had a situation, even with just like our general physician, where sometimes they get to the point where like, yes, I know everything, and my first intuition is going to be correct. And then that gets into misdiagnosis and things like that. So I think, yeah, you nailed the concept that we hope that all of our health and wellness professionals are hopefully adopting as well.
Yeah.
So you mentioned minimalism, and this is something that I am passionate about, that I've never actually talked about on the podcast before. But I have been adding, minimalist values into my life and adopting minimalist practices for the last year and a half now. And it's been one of the biggest game changers in my life, other than losing 100 pounds. And, it's just had a profound impact where I feel like as an entrepreneur, a type A personality, I can very easily fall into the trap of more work, more and more relationships, more and more busy, more goals, bigger goals. And what's the next goal? And I've fallen into that to the point where I've talked about before, where I've worked myself into the hospital 3 different times, from anxiety attacks, passing out, all that sort of thing.
Wow.
So minimalism has flipped the switch. And so let's dive into that a little bit. And
that'd be great.
Yeah, how have you incorporated minimalist values, minimalist lifestyle practices, both into your own lifestyle, but also in your business, and how you coach people? How has that impacted that area as well?
Yeah. So I guess I'll start with the personal side.
Yeah.
So for me, minimalism is really a framework with which then I can look at everything else in my life. And I think the basic part that works really well for me, or the parts that work really well for me, are the concepts of letting things go.
Yeah.
And not bringing in stuff that you don't need or want. And those two things apply so broadly. Like, it's not just stuff. In fact, stuff is like the least of it. Right. It applies to food. It applies to people. It applies to obligations and work commitments. And, with my daughter, signing her up for activities, and so not bringing too much into our lives so that we're overscheduled and overburdened and overstressed. And then if and when, because frankly, even with that mindset of trying not to bring too much in, we always, inevitably do in some way or another. And so then it's an exercise of, what do I let go? How do I let that go? Whether it's, an obligation that just overfilled my plate and I can't do that, or a like commitment to myself, or maybe even like parent guilt.
Yeah, that's real. That's real.
Yeah. Like my daughter right now, because I'm divorced, she spends half of her time with her father, and she's sick right now, and I'm not there. And man, there's a lot of guilt in that. But even if I was, still in the same town, I wouldn't be there. I couldn't be there just because of the arrangement that we have. And so I have to let that go. And for me, minimalism is so helpful because it's kind of this continual reminder to let things go, to focus and prioritize. And that is really, really helpful with life, with work, with fitness. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love Joshua Becker's definition that he throws out there about, what is minimalism? Well, it's maximizing the things that add the most value and minimizing anything that gets in the way of that. And that's been kind of just a statement that I have to run through my mind as a filter, like you said, over and over again in each situation. And I see I coach so many busy moms and busy dads, talking about the parenting guilt, and they just feel like their kid cannot miss out on any opportunity. Therefore they must, engage in every single sport and every single ballet lesson. And then, yes, when our neighbors invite us over to dinner, we must always say yes. And it's we just have that guilt of there's fear of missing out, but then there's just the social pressure guilt. And, it's so interesting. I always try to, drop a little minimalism knowledge, on people when I'm coaching them. Sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. But so when you're working with a client and trying to get them healthier, what are some strategies or techniques that you use to introduce minimalist values or concepts?
Yeah. So because I have branded my business the way I have, minimal wellness, it's kind of, people don't generally reach out to me unless they have some sort of interest in it. Okay. So it's nice that I kind of go from that baseline.
Yeah, that is nice.
Yeah. So they kind of expect it. But we talk about, where their plates are overfull, or strategizing around time management, or motivation or discipline, right? And these concepts are made easier by having fewer things in your space and fewer things on your plate. So I don't talk about minimalism explicitly very often, but I talk about it implicitly a lot. Yeah. So lots of time management, lots of prioritization, talking about being regimented with bedtimes even, which sounds so rudimentary, but gosh, if we're not sleeping, everything else starts falling apart. And that's one of the areas that, independent of nutrition and fitness, from a, traditional viewpoint, that sleep piece is really, really critical.
And some people may not make that connection. Well, what does sleep have to do with minimalism? I don't want to minimize my sleep. But it goes back to, we are too damn busy. Yeah. That's why we're not getting enough sleep is what we're talking about. And we're saying yes to too much. We're putting too much stuff on our plate and in our schedule. Therefore the sleep, I know people that are sleeping like 3 or 4 hours. I'm like, you're a walking zombie. You need to just think about how much more productive and happy and healthy and your quality of life, how much that'll go up just by doubling the amount of sleep you get. And they're like, well, how do I do that? And I'm like, minimalism, baby. Let's talk about it. So you talked about sleep. Are there any other just, one or two major minimalist mindsets or values that you feel like would be good, kind of like gateway drugs, to just paraphrase, put something out there, that people could start with when they're like, I'm not really sure what minimalism is, but it sounds like I need to start incorporating some of these mindsets. What would be a good starting point in your opinion?
It's not even so much a starting point for minimalism, but I think one of the things that has been really helpful for a lot of the people that I work with is to try to cultivate an awareness of how much we're sold every day, how much we're advertised to, how much we're marketed to, how much is sold to us. And when you start cultivating that awareness, you realize that you're literally bombarded with it every day, all day. And it's things from obviously food, food manufacturing, but even fitness and wellness and, cars and clothes and makeup and all these things that, we're told, we need right now. And I think the first step to being able to disengage from that is being aware of it. And so, helping people understand. I'm working with a bunch of people right now who are trying to reduce the amount of alcohol that they take in, and not from like more like just it's too much for what they consider to be healthy. And a lot of them have done this exercise and are like, oh my God, I never realized how saturated our lives are with overt and covert messaging around alcohol.
Yeah.
And,
it's amazing.
Yeah. So, and, obviously it applies to junk food. It applies to, you need to look this way.
Yeah.
It's really, really, our lives are saturated with it. And so I think that if someone doesn't have an initial entry point to minimalism, just realizing how bombarded we are with that advertising and that marketing can start to open up the eyes to how influenced we are by the need to consume, or we're being encouraged to consume 24/7. And so when we can start to see that, then we can start to be like, right, do I actually need to be consuming these things? Or it can start illuminating why people feel the compulsion to consume, whether that's food or whether that's, consumer purchases, or, the new car every couple years, or the bigger house, or, any of those things. And when we can start to get a grasp on our purchases, then oftentimes we get a grasp on our finances, and we can start, because of the finances, start regaining control of our time.
Yeah.
Because we don't have to spend, 80 hours a week working.
Correct. Yeah. We don't feel the need. Like, I got to pay off my bins and
yeah. Drive a 10-year-old Prius.
Well, yeah. So while we're talking about it, since I've mentioned things every once in a while, but it may not come together for my regular listeners, but I sold my since I've been using minimalist values, I sold my pickup truck. I drive an all electric car. I've got a 2013 Nissan Leaf, and it's a tiny car. Like, it's a tiny car, and I'm 6'3", 220, and so it's awesome. But I haven't had to pay for gas in a year, and it's environmentally friendly, and
amazing.
I don't have a payment on it. We're getting this Friday. We're actually moving to a smaller house, and it's closer to work, and we're not going to have a mortgage and all this stuff. So all these things have given me control over that stress point of money. Right.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing that impacts all the decisions that we make, is stressing about money. I'm really glad that you brought that up. Now, I want to pick your brain, just as a fellow wellness professional, as an entrepreneur. One of the things I really struggle with, I'm goal driven. I love to achieve a goal. I've got impact goals. I try to make sure I'm making impact goals, not necessarily monetary goals. It's not the $1 million mission. It's the $1 million mission. I feel like if I do that, then good things will happen. But how do you, I've been really thinking about the term enough. What is enough? What is enough impact? What is enough income to provide for my family? Like, do you ever think along those terms, and how do you deal with that with like a minimalist mindset? Because it's a tough thing for me to wrap my mind around, because I kind of grew up thinking, okay, you achieve the goal, now it's the 2 million pound mission, and that's just the next goal. So have you ever thought about that concept at all?
Yeah. I've kind of gone back and forth with it. Because my business is still so new, it's not even 2 years old yet. And so I'm still very much in like the initial growth phase. And so for me, and my partner, Josh, has been so helpful with, framing how I think about my business. And from the day one, when I decided to leave my former position, which I'd been at for 9 years, or at least with the same department for 9 years, I left, and I was really worried about the financial side of things, because I'm an extremely independent person. I've always been, the breadwinner in a relationship that I've had, or the larger breadwinner, I should say. And so a bit of my identity is wrapped up in not in being independent and having this lifestyle that is comfortable, right? And that is not stressed for financial resources. I certainly was never wealthy, but I was never uncomfortable or worried about paying bills. And when I left that position and started Minimal Wellness, I was starting from zero. And Josh, my partner, said, don't worry about producing things to make money. Don't worry about making money with your business. Worry about making an impact. And make sure that everything that you do is to help people and add value to their lives. And the other stuff will come, that the financial side of it will come.
Right.
And for me, luckily, save for a few, days here and there where I'm like, it's not going to come together. Yeah. It has. And, luckily at this point, it's at a place, my business is at a place where I feel really good about it. And no, I'm not raking it in. But I feel like I'm adding a lot of value to the people who I work with. And that brings me so much joy and fulfillment that the financial side of it doesn't seem nearly as important. Because we've also, with these minimalist principles, we have very few bills, our cars are paid off. We don't have any debt. We have investments. So I guess I don't struggle a whole lot with the goal side of it. It's more just continuing to find peace with doing work that matters, which clearly you are. Your work is amazingly impactful.
That's what we're going after.
Yeah.
That's what we're on the same side of the battle line. It's sometimes in health and fitness, it's very easy for ego to get involved and be like, well, I'm more of an expert trainer than you are, my friend. And I just see people like you and me, the thing we're battling against is obesity and unhealthy habits. And, and so that's, we just align our power and we crush obesity. That's what we're going after.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, I love everything you just said. It rings true. So as your business and your book of clients, your book of business grows, what I kind of struggle with is I have so many ideas. I'm just oh, this would be awesome. And that would be awesome. This charity event would be awesome. And this different podcast would be awesome. What kind of a filter are you using for, okay, this is worth pursuing? 'Cause I know you've put out some new stuff recently. So let's maybe talk about that and how you got to the point of okay, this is the thing I'm going to focus on. And this is what I'm going to put out there. Did you have 10 different ideas and that was the one you selected, or what was the thought process behind that? Yeah.
So, I offer a few different services, right? I do one-on-one coaching. And then I have a group, a web-based group. It's called the 23-day priorities reset. And, I knew that I wanted to do some sort of larger group type program, that was web-based. And the reset took shape because, I've been working with clients for a decade and have noticed that there's just this cluster of challenges around prioritizing things, understanding what's actually important in their lives versus what they're told should be important, or what they want to be important, just an example, I work with a lot of younger mothers and younger fathers too, but more mothers than fathers. And there's a decent number that like want to, I think, in their head, be able to put in an hour at the gym every single day and to make all of their meals scratch from home. And sometimes I have to say, like, you're also working 60 hours a week and you have 3 young children and a husband and, maybe a sick family member. And sometimes my role is helping them recognize that we can make progress on being healthier without trying to achieve this version of perfection that we've, crafted in our heads. Like that the everyday efforts you put in, eating your vegetables, not consuming too much sugar, moving your body when you have the opportunity, taking the stairs or banging out a bunch of push-ups in your office or doing wall sits during a meeting, being the weirdo that will, go sit against the wall. Like making the effort, but morphing your choices to fit with what your current reality is. And the priorities reset, the way that I have it structured, it helps people go through like what their values actually are and where they're spending their time. And I try to help them identify the places where they can make small tweaks that over time will make a really big impact. And
I love it. I've sent some people that direction and it's, I feel like, just like you said, so many people get caught up in the ideal situation. And I've found that so many people don't even start because like, oh, it's not going to be a perfect 8 weeks. I can't do this 8-week program because I have, this one day when there's an office meeting and I won't be able to be perfect on the plan. So no sense in even starting. And I'm like, what? Like do the best that you can do. When you can't be at your best, you can still do your best. And that's what we have to do. Yeah. So yes.
I do a lot of debunking of the perfect.
Yes. Good. The world needs it, Becca. I mean, it's a huge problem. Like I said, people just don't even get started at all. And doing, I just read a book called Best Year Ever by Michael Hyatt. And one of the quotes that I loved was that doing is always better than waiting to do. So let's start doing. All right. So you mentioned the online course, you do some one-on-one coaching. What's the best way for people just to follow you, your story, to get connected with you? We've got obviously the website, minimalwellness.com. But where else can people connect with you?
I'm pretty active on Instagram, I guess. I don't know. That's relative, I suppose, these days. I try to engage on Instagram relatively frequently. So Instagram seems to be a good platform for people. I'm not so good with Facebook, although I try, and mostly my website. On the website at the top of the page, there's a field there where you could sign up for my newsletter, and I always let people know through the newsletter of new programs and the kind of big things going on. But yeah, the website, the newsletter, and social media. And my handle is just at Minimal Wellness.
Yep. We'll get that linked up in the show notes in the blog. And I love your website because you go on it and you just feel like the minimalist coming through. I'm like, this is like, there's not even whole words. Like in your, I love how on your, your coaching and stuff like that, it just has like the first letter. And I'm like, that's even better. I know what she's talking about. So, I love the simplicity of your website for sure. And your Instagram page is awesome. So I definitely will get people connected up to that. So I wanted to throw one more big question out there at you. I know I want to be respectful of your time, but so many people just struggle with, like I said, cluttering our schedules and our lives to the point where it just starts to wreak havoc on our lifestyle, the stress levels, the relationships, our health. It just eats away at that quality of life. So what advice would you give somebody that's listening to us right now that feels like they're in that situation, that busyness overflow, but they want to actually climb out of it. What if you could sit down, look them in the eye, and tell them one or two things? What would that be?
Yeah. So I am currently rereading one of my favorite books, and it's called Anything You Want. It's by Derek Sivers.
Yes.
And in that book, he talks about his principle for how he decides whether or not he's going to do something. And for him, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And I wrote a blog post recently about a cruder version of this saying that I like to use. But think about your obligations and the things on your calendar and what you're putting on your plate, and say, is it a hell yes? And if it's not a hell yes, get it off your plate. And that might take some time and effort, right? It might take some hard conversations. But those hard, honest conversations, perhaps with friends or family about, declining, certain invitations, or, with your boss and unreasonable expectations at work, or, like email, for example. I know email can consume our lives if we let it, like putting the email in a box and saying, look, I only check my email at XYZ times during the day, and I'm not going to check it in the evening. I'm not going to, engage in work on the weekends. Or if I do, I'm going to do it during these, relatively small windows, and start slowly, but putting the effort into pulling the things off your plate that aren't hell yeses. And be diligent about it. I think that just like with the perfectionism piece, we like to pretend that we're going to be able to make these sweeping overhauls immediately. And that, you start putting in the effort to clear your plate, and 3 weeks later, it's only, 10% better. Well, 10% is still so much better than not. And if you continue to make those efforts, it's going to be 20% better in another couple weeks, and maybe even 30 or 40% better. And so we have to recognize and celebrate those like incremental changes, and then make really good use of the time and the space that gets freed up.
Yeah, I love it. It's all about momentum, and momentum starts with that first step, and that's how we get moving.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, that hell yes or no is so great. And
I love your blog post, by the way. I read it this morning. Yeah. It's awesome. So you guys definitely have to check that one. I'll link to that specific post as well. We'll put that in the show notes as well. So I'm so thrilled that you came on, because like I said, when we were kind of chatting before we started recording, two of the things that had the biggest impact on my life were obviously losing my 100 pounds, but then the minimalism thing, and just the relief that I felt by, some people, like I went on. So a good example of people freaking out is I own 79 clothing items now, total, counting socks as two things. All right. So if I have a pair of socks, that's two. All right.
Nice.
And so I posted, I never really gone I've been like out of the closet, so to speak, minimalist, So I post a picture of my closet, which has like one of those hanging compartment hangers, and then just my clothes, a pair of jeans, a couple shirts and things like that. And it's like 2 feet wide, of things. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I own 79 clothing items, #minimalism. And I get people emailing me like, are you in a cult? Are you, what is this minimalism thing? It's not huge in the Midwest yet, I guess, and I don't know, or at least in my hometown, I guess. So people just don't understand. So then I have to start explaining it. And all these people are like, you know what? That actually sounds like something that I need to look at. And I always send people to check out the minimalism documentary on Netflix. Everything that remains, the book. Those are the two things that were just game changers for me. Yeah. And then checking out the Minimalist podcast. Joshua Becker's stuff is awesome. It is, so
Yeah. Courtney
Those are all-
Carver's stuff is really great
Yes,
for the clothing side of things,
Yes.
especially.
Yes, her challenge is amazing. So if, I just want to challenge people out there. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, you know what, I kind of think I need to do something about this. It seems like this would be a fit. And minimalism is what you make of it. It's not a cult. It's not a religion. It's not even like a program. It's like, I need to sign up for the minimalism program.
Yeah.
It's a mindset. It's a lifestyle. And don't put pressure on yourself. If you're going to try to start incorporating some of this stuff, that's like the opposite of like, I'm not minimalist enough yet. What's wrong with me? I've seen people kind of do that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a competition or a cult or anything like that. No, it's a mindset. Yeah. And it's a really helpful one at that.
Yep. Yeah. So Becca, I want to just thank you for spending some time with us, because it's just been a joy to be able to kind of nerd out on the minimalism thing, because I have so much energy for it. So I feel like it's a message that needs to get out there. And I just appreciate your knowledge and your ability to just communicate in a way that people can relate to. I think that's why I follow you on Instagram. That's why I like your blog, is because you are a real person, that it's obvious that you aren't out there like pushing products and trying to sell things. You have things that you earn income off of, but you can tell that's not your focus. And that's just a vehicle to achieve the impact that you're looking for. So I appreciate that so much. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. And I can't wait to get this episode out there. Yeah,
man. I appreciate you. You are doing fantastic work. And I love the trajectory of everything you've got going on. So
awesome.
I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Well, thank you, my friend. So everybody out there that's listening, as always, I want to challenge you to think about the one thing that kind of created that biggest spark as you listened to Becca and I talking today. And I want you to take some sort of action on that in the next 24 hours. Maybe it's checking out one of the books that we talked about. Maybe it's cleaning out your closet. Maybe it's just taking a look at your schedule and thinking, I need to kind of let some pressure off. I need to let a little air out of my schedule and create some space. So whatever that is, let's take action in the next 24 hours. And as always, I'm going to challenge you to get out there. I want you to own it every meal, every workout, every day. And I will see you on the next episode. All right, I've got one quick question before you take off. Have you taken on my Subscribe for 5 challenge yet? If not, here's how it works. If I've been able to add any value to you with this episode or inspire you with the content, I want you to hit the subscribe button and give me 5 episodes. Listen to 5 episodes, and if you aren't inspired, then I get fired. All right, so you can unsubscribe. No harm, no foul, no hurt feelings by me. But I think that you're going to love the content. You're going to love the 3 shows per week that we're putting out there. So subscribe for 5, get inspired, get fired up, and get better results.